Hello and welcome to our Sit Down Sunday Q&A. Again, another week where we answer your questions. This week we're going to be talking about birth control after pregnancy.
Postpartum birth control, yeah.
And then also talking about daycare, childcare. When is it safe to go to a daycare, or are there times when you need to do something else for childcare to keep your kiddo safe?
Yes, if this is your first time meeting us, I'm Sarah. I'm a board certified OBGYN and mama to one with one on the way.
Yep, and I'm Kurt. I'm a board certified pediatrician, and
we are the Doctors Bjorkman. All right, so this week our first question comes from Aria Montoya, and she says, I got my IUD, the Liletta, put in at my 6-week postpartum appointment. My cousin told me she was on something called a mini pill because it only has one hormone which is preferred for breastfeeding moms. Is there research that says certain hormones and certain birth controls are bad or can affect babies through breastfeeding? I wasn't told about any of this. LOL, I love you guys.
Gosh, there's so much to know and think about, hey?
Totally. So postpartum contraception, though, is something that your OBGYN and myself love because of kind of the data out there about pregnancy spacing and, allowing your body time to heal. We want to make sure you don't get pregnant again right away.
Yeah, and we actually did an episode all about the best time to have the next baby that you guys can check out. We'll put a card up for you if you want to check that out.
Yes. So as for postpartum contraception, yes, there are some different options. In general, we think about birth control pills, patches, rings, IUDs, and implants as like general contraception. And postpartum, there are some special considerations that we think about. So after you give birth, you are at a higher risk of getting a blood clot, is one of those considerations. So birth control containing estrogen in it, which is many combined birth control pills, we generally try to avoid those in the first 4 to 6 weeks postpartum.
Just a month and a half is when you need to avoid those.
Ish, yes.
Okay.
That 6-week mark is where that risk is elevated. This is not a high risk, but just compared to someone who's not pregnant, your risk postpartum and during pregnancy is higher. So generally try to avoid birth control pills that contain estrogen during that time. The other thing, and so this mini pill is a birth control pill that only contains progesterone. Okay, it doesn't have that estrogen component. It is just progesterone. So that's great in terms of blood clot risk. The other thing to think about for postpartum breastfeeding moms is that there is some data and experience from other moms out there that estrogen in the birth control pills can actually kind of be detrimental to your supply.
Decreasing the supply from estrogen.
Yes, and can affect your breast milk supply. So not that it's dangerous to baby. It's totally safe to be on birth control pills with estrogen in terms of safety to passing it in the milk to baby. That isn't a concern. But and some women can take combined birth control pills with estrogen and progesterone and it doesn't affect their supply. Some women are much more sensitive to those hormones and find that it does. So to be on the safe side for multiple reasons, we generally start with the mini pill at least for those first 6 weeks to make sure your supply is established before we introduce any fluctuations. Women sometimes notice a dip in their supply around the time of their period and different things, and that again is because of some hormone fluctuations. In terms of your IUD, awesome postpartum contraception. It is a set it and forget it method that is super, super effective, 99% effective at preventing another pregnancy. IUDs, the Liletta, Mirena, Kyleena, Skyla, all of them are all progesterone only containing devices. And the interesting thing about those is that the hormone they release from the little device that's in your uterus is local. So those hormones are just really acting on your uterus and not system-wide. So again, long answer to that question. Another progesterone only option is the implant, like a Nexplanon. That is also something that sometimes we can do while you're in the hospital, immediately postpartum. And We should do a whole episode about postpartum contraception options because it is really important.
And that actually dovetails really well into our next question. So this is from Valeria, who says, hi, I have 2 questions to an OBGYN and to a mom. Number 1, what are your birth control options right after the delivery if you have horrible PMS and if the monocompetent pills gave you PPD before? So I think you just talked about all of those things.
Yep.
Number 2, did you put your daughter to a daycare or hire a nanny? What are your plans for the upcoming baby? What is an okay age for baby to start daycare? Thank you. So I'm going to take the second question there. So we've been really fortunate right away in terms of our own schedules, in terms of being home for the first couple months. Either one of us was able to actually be the primary parent for quite a while, and we had lots of help from grandma.
With number one.
With number one. And then we're able to hire a couple different
High schoolers.
college students. College students, actually, who
Wonderful college
who
students.
came and helped us out between classes and just worked really well.
That was largely, she was a COVID baby a little bit.
Yes, yeah.
And I was nervous about sending her to daycare with all the same things you are asking about. Hey, her immune system getting sick, whatever. And so just because of our life and daycare availability and COVID, we had a family member. My mom was able to come and live with us for the first 6 months of her life. And
then now we're kind of hybrid where we've got some in-home help and then also like goes to daycare preschool for a couple days a week too, which is nice. And so I think the question that you might be asking or that many people are asking are twofold. Like 1, when is it safe for them to go to daycare from a health standpoint? Right. And 2, is there a time when they need to go for a socialization standpoint? So from a safety virus thing, so of course this is well known, if they go to daycare, you're going to give half your salary to pay for it, and then they're going to come home with a new cold every week, is the meme I just saw a couple days ago, and felt that to my core for sure.
Yes.
Definitely there are, like, the first couple weeks of life, of course, when you are hopefully home on your maternity leave, are the times when your baby is most vulnerable to infection. So the first 2 weeks, especially of life, of course, if you can avoid them being around a lot of people, and if you can go 2 months even, is even better.
Because they get those 2-month vaccines.
2-month vaccines,
okay.
And even just your immune system is really developing, and there's actually this barrier between the bloodstream and then the brain and the fluid around the brain, the CSF, that's really developing over those first 2 to 8 weeks kind of throughout that process, and the risk of getting an infection in the cerebral spinal fluid after 2 weeks drops significantly, and then more after 30 days, and then even more after 60 days. And so that's kind of, if you're able to,
so 60 days is
2 months,
okay.
8 weeks, somewhere in that ballpark. So
okay.
if that generally lines up with most people's maternity leave, is a nice time to be home, to be safe for them, if you can, if that's an option for you. The other thing is, if they get a fever in those first couple weeks of life, the pediatrician or the emergency department that you would bring them into would have to be really thoughtful about, do they need to do blood work, urine work, or even potentially check the fluid in the spinal column with a lumbar puncture to check that fluid to look for serious bacterial infections if they get a fever and are sick in those first couple weeks of life. After that, it's kind of up to you and what's going to work best for your family. If you're able to have them home, it just limits the number of viral illnesses that they're giving to you. I know we've each been sick a couple times with different illnesses this fall. And it's part of a child building their own immunity, and that's okay, and every child is going to have their own path to that.
Yes.
There's really not a perfect time when they need to go, or definitely they're going to be better able to weather some of those viral illnesses as they get a little bit older. Once they're a couple months of age, they should be able to do most of it. But of course, if you have concerns about your baby breathing fast or not able to keep up with hydration, call your pediatrician.
And that being said, many people, I feel like 6 weeks is such a common maternity leave, in the United States at least, which isn't long enough.
Yeah.
But it's pretty common. Have lots of friends whose babies go right back to daycare at 6 weeks. They do just fine. Generally, at daycare, ratios with infants are much, much smaller. Mm-hmm. And, instead of one caregiver to 8, it's one caregiver to 4 tiny babies or less, and things like that. Little tiny infants also aren't playing with other little snot-nosed toddlers, sharing toys, things like that. They're, hanging out with the caregivers in a crib, doing different things. So I think
that kind of helps them.
It helps a little cocoon them in terms of if your baby has to go in there little tiny, because that's what you need for your life. That's okay. They they will be fine.
Yep.
There is not a recommendation from the AAP or anyone else that says, try to keep your baby out of daycare until 8 weeks. Like, that's not a thing. So don't feel guilty about that. In terms of daycare in general, find somewhere you feel very comfortable with.
Yep.
That people you trust, and if something I think is helpful is kind of trying a run through, like your last week of maternity leave, say, hey, can I bring the baby for 3 hours this morning just to try it, so that like, hey, here's what I need to pack, here's my drive there, here's how it goes. I can cry about this a little less because I feel more comfortable when
Very important for dads to practice crying.
When that day comes, you know what I mean? So just something to think about as you're getting ready to go back to work, whenever that is to see if you can try a run through of where baby's going to be, taking a bottle, taking the baby, getting there, all of those things. It doesn't have to be the full day, just even to ease yourself into it, and make sure you feel comfortable with the place you're leaving your sweet little one to be loved on, and it will just make your life so much better if you feel like your baby is in good hands.
Yep, and the other piece of that too, if you're really worried about, hey, I really want my baby to get their first round of vaccines, you can technically give them as early as 6 weeks. We were actually like, when Cecilia was young, we were going to be out of town at her 8-week, 2-month visit, and so we gave those vaccines actually 2 weeks before that 2-month visit, which is well within kind of the normal time frame for that, if that's something you're interested in. The other piece of this question is, when do they need to be around other children for socialization? In the first 18 to even maybe 24 months of life, really that child's biggest thing is to learn language and to interact with their world around them. Maybe they do some parallel play, but not a whole lot of interactive play, especially in the first year and a half. And so a lot of that social interaction they can get at home from parents or loved care providers that are able to just interact with them, reading to them lots, narrating life so that they hear language. They don't necessarily need to be around other children for that.
Right, and that's been studied in terms of like, is this socialization required? And again, before the 18 to 24 month mark, it does not appear to be detrimental. All these little COVID kids that didn't get to go to daycare are going to turn out just fine.
Yep. But if you are at home with your child, try to find ways to make sure you're doing different things with them every day, like in the house, in terms of like, hey, we're going to play this game. We're going to go touch all the fabrics in the house today, or oh, we're going to look at all the colors in the house today, just to find ways to make sure you're exposing them to different things that you as parent at home are able to do.
Yeah, and even around other kids at an indoor park, at the playground, where they are around other kids. I think Cease had her mind get a little bit blown when she went to school this year, and the whole world did not revolve around her constantly. And so there are certainly opportunities, even when they are little, even though they're not like playing with other kids, to kind of learn about the world around them and different boundaries. Is it needed to make sure your kid, turns out fine? Not really before 18 to 24 months, but there are opportunities for them to, learn some boundaries outside of the home when there are other little people around.
Absolutely. So that's it for us this week. Thank you so much for your questions. As always, we will answer more questions next Sunday. Look forward to seeing you guys then and on our regular Wednesday episodes.
Have a great week.
Bye, guys. We're doctors.
But not your doctors.
Anything we've said in this video is for education or entertainment purposes only.
It is not medical advice.
Any specific medical questions you have should be directed to your provider.